Hello everyone. I am Dr. Abhishek, postgraduate pharmacology. Today our topic is insulin. So we know insulin is used in treatment of diabetes. So in generally in management of diabetes, if we see, there are non-pharmacological methods and pharmacological methods. In pharmacological methods, it includes insulin and oral hypoglycemic agents. Non-pharmacological methods, we know diet control and physical exercise, etc. This diabetes is two types, as we know, mainly type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So this insulin is mainstay of treatment in the type 1 diabetes. In type 2 diabetes, if it is resistant to oral or something, many patients may use in type 2 diabetes also. So if we see about insulin is a polypeptide or protein in nature. It contains 51 amino acids arranged in two chains. If we see in the diagram, these are two chains, A chain, B chain. These insulin molecules exist as dimers generally in the body. Dimers. They assemble into hexamers in the presence of zinc ions. So if we see the actions of insulin, we know that insulin is mainly anabolic hormone. So it has its different effects on different metabolites like glucose, fatty acids and amino acids, etc. So if we see, it has rapid and intermediate and delayed actions. Mainly rapid action mainly shows on the glucose, and intermediate action mainly shows on the protein synthesis and inhibition of protein degradation, and delayed effects are mainly in the lipogenic, that is towards the lipid synthesis. Okay, it has mainly effect on the glucose, immediate effect, and it also has effect on protein and lipids, but it is delayed effect. Overall, it is a anabolic hormone, inhibits the degradations and promotes the synthesis. Next, mechanism of its effect on the glucose uptake. Insulin effect on the glucose uptake. So insulin has receptor on the cell membranes, because insulin is a bigger molecule. It contains 50 amino acids around. So it has its receptor on the cell membrane, difficult to enter into cell membrane. So it goes and sits on the receptor, insulin receptor on the cell membrane of body, cell membranes, and then the secondary messengers carry from the receptor. Secondary messengers comes and carries the information, and that results in multiple effects within the cell. Finally, that leads to translocation of glucose transporters from cell to cell membrane, so that from that glucose transporters, glucose comes into the cell. That means from extracellularly or from blood, the glucose is entering into the cells. That is how the glucose is getting uptaken by the cells. Next, if you see this diagram, this is the insulin. Insulin has cell membrane receptors. From their secondary messengers, this all process is happening. Finally, this glucose transporter from the cell, it is translocating to the cell membrane, so that glucose coming inside. Next, insulin not only causes glucose uptake by the cells, it also inhibits the glycogen degradation also, as we discussed previous. So how the insulin is removed from the body? There is a little bit difference physiological and therapeutic insulin comparatively. Generally it is excreted physiologically by liver 60%, 40% by kidney. In insulin therapy, 60% by kidney and 40% by liver on average. So coming to the discovery of insulin, in 1921, Banting and Best first extracted insulin from dog pancreas. So in 1921, first extracted from the dog pancreas, and then in 1936, protamine is added to the insulin so that it became intermediate acting insulin. Next, in 1982, the human insulins were discovered. From the discovery, the allergic symptoms to the insulin are decreased to a large extent, because if it is the insulin is of animal origin, it will cause more reactions to our body compared to human insulin. So that is relieved from allergic reactions. In 1996, scientists developed rapidly acting insulins also. That is called example insulin Lispro. In 2000s, long-acting insulins also developed. For example, insulin Glargine. Later on, so many rapid-acting and many long-acting insulins are also developed. This is how it is evolved. So coming to human insulin is generally it is a regular insulin. It is nothing but a short-acting insulin. And NPH insulin also, by adding protamine, it is becoming intermediate acting insulin. Yeah, this is human insulin, and there are analog insulins that are rapid acting insulins and long acting insulins. So we are using the word analog. That means it is structurally mostly similar, but little bit changes in the structure that led to the differing in the action of the insulin. Little bit structural differences, that means in the amino acid sequence, or adding a new amino acid or removing a existing amino acid, etc. By doing these things, it is these some arrangements. By doing these changes, scientists developed rapid acting insulins and long acting insulins. Let's see how they developed. So if you see short acting insulin preparations, that means rapid acting, nothing but rapid acting insulin preparations. How they prepared. Regular insulin, we know that it exists as dimers and hexamers. But because of the replacements in the insulin analogs, that is the replaced insulins, are little bit changes if we do, the dimers and hexamers are dissociating rapidly into active monomers. Because of some structural changes, it is the dimers and hexamers, which are normally existing as in regular insulin, it is differing, and it is getting dissociating rapidly into monomers comparatively, leading to the more rapid absorption. If we give subcutaneously that rapid acting insulins, it dissociates fasterly instead of dimers and hexamers, so that it is absorbed into the blood from subcutaneous tissue easily. That is how it is showing longer, short acting or rapid acting type. You can see in this picture monomeric insulin, for example. Coming to regular insulin, it is short acting insulin, as we discussed. It is soluble crystalline zinc insulin. These molecules associate as hexamers in aqueous solution. Because of this aggregation, the absorption is little bit slower. That is why it should be taken 30 to 45 minutes before meals. The peak action comes at 2 to 3 hours. Duration of action is totally 4 to 6 hours. So if we see the rapid acting insulins instead, the rapid acting insulins names: insulin Lispro, insulin Aspart, insulin Glulysin. So insulin Lispro, we discussed there is some structural changes. If we see what are they, proline at B28 position is reversed with lysine at B29. That is nothing but Lispro. We can remember by the name of the insulin analog. Lis means lysine, pro means proline. The sequence is reversed. Yeah. And next, insulin Aspart. In this substitution of proline by aspartic acid at position of B28 in the sequence of amino acids, that led to the insulin Aspart. We discovered it is created. So as the name suggests, Aspart, insulin Aspart, that means it is a substitution by the aspartic acid. Next, insulin Glulysin. So amino acid aspargine at position B3 is replaced by lysine. And the second change is lysine at B29 is replaced by glutamic acid. Here also same, as the name suggests, glutamic acid replacing, and lysine. So the name Glulysin. So if you see the pharmacokinetic properties, dynamic properties, we can give it less than 15 minutes before meal. Why? Because it is beneficial to the patient. Why? Because regular insulin we are giving 30 to 45 minutes before. So for every time we are not that much prepared, or we may not be that much planned for the meal. So here we can give before less than 15 minutes, as it is acting rapidly, so that just before taking meal we can eat within 10 to 15 minutes. We cannot wait. We need not wait 30 to 40 minutes like rapid acting short acting insulin or regular insulin. So its peak action comes at half an hour to 1.5 hours. Its total duration of action around 3 to 4 hours duration. See, there is an insulin called which we can inhale also. This is also rapid acting insulin. Why? Because it is rapid acting insulin. It is comparatively more rapid because we are inhaling directly. It is shorter than other injectable insulins comparatively, because we are taking it is absorbing through the intestine, through the lung mucosa. So it is not widely used. Maybe because of there can be some allergic reactions also, because we are inhaling through the lungs. There may be irritability, and there may be some side effects little bit. So its onset of action is less than 15 minutes. We can give little bit just before meals, or within 15 minutes the action can be onset, and peak occurs at half an hour to one and a half hour. Total duration is 2 to 3 hours. So these are all short acting or rapid acting insulins. Now coming to the intermediate acting insulin, it is NPH insulin. Example, NPH insulin, or nothing but isophane insulin. To the human insulin, by adding protamine, we are making it as intermediate acting insulin. After subcutaneous injection, proteolytic tissue enzymes degrade the protamine. Then it permits the insulin absorption. That is how this action is little bit prolonged than shorter acting insulins. The onset of action is 1 to 2 hours, and peak occurs at 6 to 10 hours, and duration lasts for 10 to 16 hours. So long acting insulins, example insulin glargine, it is discovered in 2000 around. So here the change is to arginine molecules attachment to the B chain carboxyl terminal and substitution of glycine for aspargine at A21 positions. It is soluble in acidic pH but precipitates in the neutral body pH after subcutaneous injection. So individual molecules slowly dissociates into circulation. Generally used once daily doses, as it is long acting. Action starts at 1 to 4 hours and duration will be 12 to 24 hours. This is one of the example in market, Lantus. So insulin detimer, this is another long acting insulin. In this terminal threonine is dropped from B30 position and fatty acid, myristic acid is attached to the B29 lysine. This modification prolongs the action by both increased self-aggregation and reversible albumin binding. It has a lower within subject pharmacodynamic variability compared to NPH and glargine insulins. Action starts at 1 to 4 hours, duration 12 to 20 hours around. So insulin degludec, threonine at position B30 has been removed and lysine at position B29 is conjugated to hexadecanoic acid. In the vial, they exist as dihexamers, not hexamer, not even hexamer, they are existing as dihexamers. When injected subcutaneous, self-associates into large multi-hexameric chains. When injected subcutaneous, it self-associates into large multi-hexameric chains consisting of thousands of dihexamers. So, chains slowly dissolve in the subcutaneous tissue. Action will be longer. The action starts at 1 to 4 hours. Duration will be 24 to 44 hours. Very long acting. So, we discussed short acting insulins, intermediate acting insulins, and long acting insulins. So, if we see generally in our body naturally, insulin secretion will be like this. Generally, there will be circulating basal insulin levels in our body, and whenever we eat or after meals, there will be there will be rise in the insulin levels. That means bolus insulin secretion and basal level of insulin will be there. Bolus will maintain the postprandial hyperglycemia. Basal will maintain normal levels. So, mixture of insulins. Sometimes there can be combinations of insulin also. For example, NPH insulin and regular insulin, 70 plus 30 percentage. So one is intermediate acting insulin, one is short acting insulin. We are combining these two. There are different combinations in this, and we can combine for the short acting and longer or intermediate acting one. And generally insulin degludec, however, can be insulin glargine or insulin detemer cannot be actually mixed with either regular insulin or rapidly acting insulin analogs in the same syringe because of some interactions or something. Insulin degludec, however, can be mixed and is available as 70% degludec plus 30% as per short and long acting insulin combinations. Like that, there are some combinations also. So how the insulin is delivered? So insulin delivery systems. So number one, insulin syringes, we know. Insulin pen devices, by pen like devices we can inject. Jet injectors, these are also some type of injectors. And subcutaneous insulin infusion pumps. See, what we are seeing is subcutaneous insulin injecting pumps, and implantable pumps also will be there. Sometimes it can be implanted under the skin. Like I said, these are some of the delivery systems. Next, mainstay. So we can give insulin intramuscularly, intravenously, nasally, or subcutaneously. Generally, intravenous and intramuscular or intravenous is generally for the immediate purposes, emergency purposes. Generally, we use intravenous, and generally for long-term use, we use subcutaneous route. Okay, remaining a little bit shorter duration of action. So preparation and chemistry. Human insulin produced by recombinant DNA technology, soluble in aqueous solution, doses expressed in international units. This is what international unit is. So insulins we have discussed: short acting, long acting, intermediate acting, etc. If you see short acting, we discussed, this is a summary like thing: aspart, glulysin, lispro, regular insulin. These are short acting ones, and this is the onset, and this is peak time, and this is the effective duration. Like that, long acting, detemer, glargine, degludec, NPH. If you see in the long acting ones, degludec is longest acting here. Insulin combinations, that's we discussed. Generally there will be a mixture of short and long acting ones. This is inhalational insulin, Afrezza, for example. Yeah, this is the onset, peak time, and effective duration. So routes of administration, as we discussed, IV is for rapid needs, and IM, IV, etc. We see the factors that affect insulin absorption if we use subcutaneous or something. See, site of injection is one of the factors affecting the insulin absorption, and type of insulin, that is long and short acting, will be rapidly absorbed, etc. And subcutaneous blood flow, if there is more subcutaneous blood flow, more easily goes into the blood, absorption will be more. And smoking obviously decreases. Regional muscular rigidity at the site of injection, regional muscle activity at the site of injection, and volume and concentration of injected insulin, etc. can affect the insulin absorption. And also there are some more things. Depth of injection. IM injection more easily absorbed than the subcutaneous injection. Increased subcutaneous blood flow increases the rate of absorption. For example, massage, hot bottles, exercises. This increases the subcutaneous blood flow and the rate of absorption will increase. So abdomen is currently generally preferred site. Absorption is 20 to 30% faster from this site than the arm. The abdomen, it is faster absorption than the arm. Rotation of insulin injection site recommended to avoid or limit subcutaneous scarring and lipodystrophy or lipoatrophy. To prevent these complications or side effects, we generally constantly don't give at the same place. We generally rotationally we change site of injection. So dosing and regimens. For the most of patients, replacement therapy includes mixed long acting to maintain basal level of insulin, short acting for postprandial needs. Type 1. In type 1 diabetes mellitus, generally the average dose includes 0.6 to 0.7 units per kg per day, with an average range of 0 to 0.4 to 1 units per kg per day. Okay. In type 2 diabetes mellitus, we know there will be insulin resistance, so that depending on the resistance we use. If you see in obese and pubertal, and also we have to check there are any already how much insulin pancreas is secreting, how much insulin already secreting insulin, and how much is needed. Depending on that we adjust the dose. So in obese and pubertal adolescents may require more because of peripheral resistance. Those who require 0.5 units per kg per day may have some endogenous production of insulin or more sensitive to insulin because of good physical conditioning. Generally, dose 40 to 50% of generally basal dose is 40 to 50% of total daily dosage. Remaining is prandial or pre-meal insulin. If you see uses of insulin, we know that it is used in the diabetes mellitus, and other main uses are diabetic ketoacidosis, acute hyperkalemia, and perioperative management of hyperglycemia. So for your more accurate sugar control, we use insulin. We shift to from oral to insulin generally in the perioperative period of patients. And diabetic ketoacidosis. Diabetic ketoacidosis is an emergency of increased blood sugars in the blood, so that ketone bodies will come into the blood to provide energy, and that leads to the diabetic ketoacidosis condition. In that condition, generally we use IV insulin or something, as we discussed before. And acute hyperkalemia. Acute hyperkalemia means acutely the potassium is rising in the blood. In that case also we can manage with the insulin. We can see how. For example, this is a beta cell of pancreatic islets, for example. So in the glucose, so during the depolarization of beta cells, during the depolarization of beta cell of pancreas, the depolarization occurs due to closure of the potassium channel. So that it depolarized, potassium channel closed, and K plus remains within the cell, and insulin will be secreted after depolarization of beta 2 cell. That means insulin secretion and potassium channel closing. So insulin is going out and potassium is staying in. That means these potassium and insulin has opposite actions. So if we give this is to just to know, just to remember, insulin, if suppose potassium is more in the body, we can give insulin so that potassium goes down and insulin into the body. So adverse effects of insulin, we know that it causes hypoglycemia if we give more, and weight gain, as it is anabolic hormone, weight gain can be there, and allergic reactions to the recombinant human insulin due to aggregated or denatured insulin preparations or to minor contaminants, or due to sensitivity to compound added to the insulin formulations. Those are allergic reactions can be there to the insulin. And lipohypertrophy and lipodystrophy, because as we are giving subcutaneous, there will be subcutaneous fat, and that is affecting, that leads to lipohypertrophy or dystrophy, etc. So insulin treatment, if you see, we have seen in the diabetes mellitus, if you see in the insulin treatment in diabetic ketoacidosis and other conditions, for example, insulin IV infusion will be given in ketoacidosis and severe hyperglycemia with hyperosmolar state. What it do is inhibits the lipolysis completely, gluconeogenesis completely, glucose uptake to near maximal. This is how it acts. Glucose uptake will be to the near maximal, so that blood glucose level goes normal or down. So as the treatment proceeds, it is often necessary to administer glucose along with the insulin, because we also need glucose also for our general body needs, to prevent hypoglycemia, as we are giving IV insulin, and to allow the clearance of all ketones. Fluid and electrolytes, particularly capless replacement, is generally part of therapy in both situations. Before the insulin infusion discontinuation, a long-acting insulin should be administered for the maintenance for some time. This is our class on insulin. Thank you. Please read the textbooks. Thank you.